I'd like to call to order the regular board meeting of the Bardstown Independent School District. If everyone can stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first item on the agenda is the reorganization of the board for 2019. Do I have a motion for chairman of the board?
Go ahead.
I make a motion for Franklin Hibbs III.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any comments or discussion? All those in favor of Franklin Hibbs for chairman of the board, state aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. I know you're tired of seeing my face up here. No. I should take my name. We'll get it. You don't want to beat me.
We don't look like that.
Yep. Jennifer's out of the water. Thank y'all for being here today. I'd like to make a motion for a vice chair, or ask for a motion for a vice chair, please.
I'd like to make a motion that Miss Kathy Reed be
Vice chair.
vice chair, chair of vice.
And do we have a second?
I will. Second.
And all in favor of that, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Reed is our new vice chair.
Congratulations, Mr. Reed.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to ask for approval of minutes in your packet, please. And is there any discussion over those minutes? I'd ask for a motion for approval.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And motion carries. Now we have confirmation approval of claims.
All right. Ms. Rogers.
Hello. So for the January 2019 claims that are before you today for approval, the total amount is $451,984.33. Of that amount, $251,839 is from Fund 1. Last year at this January board meeting, the amount that was paid was $154,517. So that's a difference of a little over $97,000. That can be attributable to, first of all, you all have heard me say this before, the Fifth Third Bank payments that we've made now that you've seen for the last several months. So that totals out of Fund 1, $72,757.70. The total amount for this month was a little over $88,000, just for reference. And then also there was a payment to Liberty Mutual for $51,783. That's timing of payment, just 1 month instead of the other, so that's what's reflected there. And then also last year at this time we had several projects that were ongoing. Lighting at the high school, there was a bus trip that the high school basketball team took, so there was a charter bus payment in there. And then also we issued the American Express rebate payment to the foundation this period last year. We'll be doing that next month instead. So we've received our final payment from American Express, and it was $6,850 for this year, and that compares to about $4,600 last year. And as I've mentioned to you before, we anticipate that there'll be greater rewards with this Fifth Third program that we're using now.
Okay, great. Do we have any further discussion?
Yeah, I say this every year, but it needs to be said. There's a bill for Roby's Country Gardens. There is no kin there whatsoever. Just want to make that clear. Okay.
Thank you for that. Any other discussion? Do we have a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor of the confirmation and approval of claims, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Approval passes. Next on our agenda is a financial report. And Ms. Tracy gets to stay and do it again.
So for the treasurer's report for December 2018 ending, there's a verified cash balance of $7,386,402.61. And you see the breakdown there by the fund totals. And then also behind that you have your balance sheets to review as well as the monthly financial report. I just have a few items for the treasurer's report today. Outside of the draft budget discussion that we'll have here in just a short while, right now is the time about as quiet as it ever is in school finance. So there's just a few things that I want to mention to you. There's state and federal regulations that we're required to distribute tax information to our employees. So that information will be dispersed by January 31st. Right now, we have already generated the W-2 information for our staff, and that will be issued this week. And then also next week, we'll issue the ACA documents as well as the 1099s to our contracted staff. So that will be way ahead of that January 31st deadline. And then you may be wondering if the federal shutdown is going to directly impact our school district. We receive federal funding by way of food service and child care disbursements for meals, as well as federal grants. The grant funding has already been approved for this year, so that's not in jeopardy. However, communication from KDE last week stated that the USDA has provided Kentucky as well as other state agencies with additional funding. So that should support our food service programs as well as child care reimbursement programs through normal levels through March ending. So if the shutdown were to continue past that time, then we would need to consider utilizing general fund monies if necessary to supplement those meal costs. And then to close, there's an update for the tax collection. Through the month of January ending, we've collected 93% of the real estate and tangible property tax bills that were issued. This is the same rate received through last year at this time. So that just confirms that our collections are as expected. In addition, we've issued bills for certifications for 4 out of the 5 distilled spirit manufacturers in our school district through December, and the 5th one was issued in January. So we expect those collections to be completed by the end of this month. So all is on schedule.
A question about the school lunch. Looking on page 158 on the bottom of our document here. So is it a true statement? Would it be true to say that the number of full paid students is roughly 10%?
Greta would be able to answer that.
We are
206 out of...
We are in the CEP program, so that is high school student only. Preschool through 8th grade is in the community eligibility provision where every child is free. So the high school is the only one that we process free and reduced applications. We do household income forms for the other schools, and that is done with our frame coordinator, and that'll give us a status for like our Title I data and things like that. But the high school is the only one that processes the lunch applications that belong in my department.
So what is the criteria for those that have to pay the full price, the full lunch? What isolates them in terms of whether they're not qualified to get the...
Based on the number of household and their income.
Okay.
And whether they're receiving any supplemental from the state.
Seems like an amazing number to me, so, okay, thank you.
Any more discussion or any questions? Thank you, Tracy.
You're very welcome.
Move towards the superintendent's report.
All right, it's a pleasure to share this superintendent's report this month. As you know, I've been focusing on different standards as part of superintendent evaluation. Standard 4 is what I'll be focusing on today, which is human resource leadership. And let me just give you a brief summary of that. Superintendents ensure the district is a professional learning community with process and systems in place that result in recruitment, induction, support, evaluation, development, and retention of high-performing, diverse staff. Superintendents use distributed leadership to support learning and teaching, plan professional development, and engage in district leadership succession planning. So that's just a brief description. There is no doubt, and something that I share with you in my board notes, I mean, it is our people that is our greatest resource. That's certainly been a belief and tradition that's been part of this district for a very long time. To kind of just give you a few examples of some of the things that have happened since being in the role of superintendent. And this is just a glimpse, just a few examples. Working closely with our new Human Resource Director, Mr. Bowling, our principals, and also other supervisors in other areas. We make sure that we're working really hard to ensure we're recruiting high quality, the best candidates. We're retaining those folks, and we're also making sure that they are well trained and prepared. An example of a need, and this there could be. This included definitely a collection of people, but we uncovered some need in the maintenance department, for example, this year. We also identified need in bus drivers, which is not uncommon across the Commonwealth. But we've worked really hard to make sure that we're identifying, recruiting, and hiring really high-quality individuals there. And I would love to go on and on about the qualities of those individuals, but for the sake of time, I won't. But they're folks that we really feel confident about. Also, to add to that would be our new SRO position. That's another addition that's based on assessing of need, and that's just been a wonderful asset. I hope that the board has an opportunity to ask school staff and school administrators about that addition. It's very, very positive. Professional development is also really important to me and clearly a part of that standard. And it's something from day one, taking time with leadership to start reflecting on and learning about leadership. We talk about that every time we come together. We spent a great deal of time talking about leadership in our summer retreat. And that's just something that is ongoing, and I don't see that ever stopping. I think that's just an important dialogue to have, and definitely focusing on what we should be doing as school leaders. To also add to the professional growth area, Mr. Bowling's participating in the human resource cadre. I know he's very new to that role, very much like I'm new in my role as superintendent. He's gotten a lot of great information from that training. He's completed, I think, 2 out of 4 modules, and he will ultimately be able to earn a certification when he finishes that. That will likely be finished early next year. And then the last example would be supporting professional learning communities. Something I'm really proud of, and I appreciate all the school leadership making this a high priority, and that is during our January Goal Day, it was really important, and we talked a lot about vertical conversations between schools, one grade level above and below, and I'm happy to report that there were some very powerful conversations that occurred on that Goal Day, and I really think that that's something, it is something I've continued to see and have continued to foster among principals, for sure, to have those conversations vertically, and I see them working really hard and seeing the benefit to having those conversations among teachers as well. So those are some things that have been occurring, and like I said, happy to share about those things under Standard 4, Human Resource Leadership. The next thing I'd like to do, and this is a lot more fun, is that our girls basketball team, if you do not know, they have been extraordinarily successful, I would say historical, in their accomplishments to this point. Their current record is 18-1. Am I right in saying, Coach, that is 18 straight wins?
18 consecutive wins, yes.
Their last time I checked and understood, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, they were ranked 19th in the state. It's very possible that has changed. And especially after a huge win on the road, Anderson County on Saturday. Anderson County, they won on the road against Anderson.
It was here.
It was here, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I thought it was away, I'm sorry, thank you. It was here, but victorious against Anderson County. It was just a huge accomplishment. So I invited them to be part of the superintendent's report, and I was hoping that they could make their way. Miss Bettleton, if you'll help them, we're going to get a quick photo of them for the record.
So if I can get one line, how tall is Rose back here?
For sure. It'll be, I don't need to necessarily, but I will.
Some of you guys come up to the front.
KK, you taller than
They also did another team down the street.
That they did. That they did.
Just a little bit. Right here.
For sure.
Everybody, you welcome. There you go. Oh, yeah. All right, make sure your face is your way.
You can be singing.
Do
you want us to bend down a little bit?
Yes, that would be wonderful. 1, 2, 3. I think they've done this a time or two. All right.
Awesome. Congratulations.
I couldn't be here like
The last celebration that I'd like to share with you, and this is actually a second celebration, is for our very first ever Top Tiger Award recipient, and that was awarded to Deputy Brian Bowles from the Nelson County Sheriff's Office. Deputy Bowles, if you'll come on up. As he's making his way up, just so the board is aware, he took a really critical role in making sure that, one, our Fast Path was installed in all of our school buildings. He has been involved in ongoing training with staff, preparing them for emergency situations. He's engaged first responders, sheriff's office, and other agencies in learning and navigating our schools, and done some training. He's been a real community leader, and I have seen him go above and beyond. I've seen him, like now, outside of his workday, also participating in making sure that our kids are safe. So really proud of his work, and it's folks like him in our community that I think really makes us just so much better, and in this case, a whole lot safer. So thank you, Deputy Bowles. Actually, if I would, I didn't share this with you guys, would you all mind being part of a photo right back here with Deputy Bowles? Come on back. Pressure. You're going to be front and center.
Good to see you again, brother.
Yes, sir.
You too.
I moved up, I don't know. Oh, you're going, boy, you're.
Yeah, I'm
I don't
Everybody come in close together.
You want to be shorter.
Hey, welcome to my world, I understand.
They look this way. 1, 2, 3. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. My hands are so cold.
Oh, you're good. Thank you all very much.
Congratulations. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Dr. Clark, so will that be a yearly award?
So we are still working on that. It is very possible. Actually, what that has the potential of doing is springboarding into, it's caused some other conversations, let me
Okay.
say that, in terms of how do we celebrate awesome accomplishment, and we've
Right.
talked about a lot of different things. So I'm excited about where this is. I think annual at least
Okay.
seems to be kind of where we are right now, but we're still working on those details and how we might go about that. That concludes Superintendent's report.
As special as award this is, when you start choosing somebody yearly, sometimes a top tiger really doesn't stand out. I think it ought to be judged on each instance,
I
each
got you.
person, instead of, well, we gotta have somebody this year, who is it?
It's a great point.
That's like,
And that's part of the conversation we've had.
Kind of waters it down.
Yeah, that's like having a distinguished person in the city every year. I'm not, never mind, I'm not gonna go there. No.
I appreciate your feedback. And those are the kind of things that we've talked about, so appreciate that very much.
I'll keep looking at
That concludes the
for a change.
superintendent's report. We've got recognition of visitors. Got anybody here you'd like to see? I don't think so.
Thank you. He's interested in being recognized.
Guys today, and Jimmy. But we're going to focus on delivery targets at Bardstown High School.
All right, Mr. Pickett, thank you. Why don't you come on up?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Clark and board members this afternoon. Each year, of course, Dr. Clark invites myself down to talk about an area of focus. And in the high school, I'll tell you, there's so many areas to focus on. I mean, graduation, transition readiness, proficiency, just a lot of things. But probably at the root of learning is the focus on our students with disabilities. And we continue to work hard to meet the needs of those students as they enter high school, because we're preparing them as they enter the real world. I mean, in a short 4 years. So I've got a few slides here just to talk about an approach that we've taken. It's a tiered approach. And of course, I want you to think in terms of a triangle, with the base being the largest, and as you move to the top, there's a smaller point of focus. So what is tiered intervention? I found a definition, and of course there's a lot of ways to explain a tiered approach to learning for students with disabilities. But I want to point out a few words here. Providing tiered instruction lies in the establishment of a workable schedule. In high school, let me tell you, a workable schedule is far different than say middle or elementary. I mean, there's so many different areas of concentration. The master schedule that we provide every year, I want to tell you this, it is student-led. Whenever students schedule, we build a schedule for students and what they need and what they desire. And probably the first thing that a guidance counselor in our school will tell you is the master schedule starts with these students of focus in the areas of disabilities. Maximizing school personnel resources at a high degree of collaboration. It's not just the special education department. It's not just 7 or 8 teachers that have caseloads of these students. It's the reg ed teachers. In high school, the level of content is much greater than, say, in elementary. These special education teachers, they went to learn how to use strategies to teach to these students with disabilities. They're not chemistry majors. They don't teach calculus. They have to learn and train themselves to work with these students. So the collaboration, and of course it is all the members of the teaching force of a school. Is this new to Bardstown High School? No, it's definitely not. We've been using this strategy, this tiered approach, for 4 years, and I'll tell you what, it has significantly reduced our number of novice students in the area of writing and math. Of course, those 2 areas are of concentration. These students, they're no longer just in touch with the special education teacher. They're working with the content teachers more one-on-one through resource and basically special one-on-one pullouts where they're getting the help that they need that they don't get in that regular setting. And the fourth thing right here, this is really neat. A lot of times you think of, your strongest teachers with the strongest students. Your highest level or most experienced math teacher with the highest level math students. Well, we have worked our master schedule to kind of fit where the veteran teacher in math and writing are working with these lowest students. And of course, along with the special education department. That's not always doable in all schools, but it makes sense. If you have a new math teacher, their first year teaching, should they be with students that are most in need? Probably not. Sometimes in the past and in some schools, the short end of the stick, you get the toughest class, but we're not doing that at the high school. I mentioned a triangle approach, the base working up to the top point. Tier 1 intervention includes all students in the regular classroom. It's the regular content classes along with the collaboration teacher. One thing we've done over the last 5 years is that our special education teachers are specializing in a certain content area. Every year, special education teacher A is in a math setting, working with the math department. Instead of jumping around from math one year to social studies the next, to science the next, we keep the master schedule intact where those teachers work in a certain area so they're more comfortable. They have to learn. They're learning from the reg ed teachers. But also, I know Mr. Boston has worked very hard to bridge that connection between the special education department and reg ed teachers with some co-teaching training recently. Just last week, here in the boardroom, I know CKEC, our local co-op, is working hard to prepare and provide professional development over co-teaching. You know, we've always had two teachers in a classroom, and they're supporting one another, but we're working harder where there's more of a co-teaching, where you can't tell the difference between the special education teacher and the reg ed teacher. Tier 2, resource classrooms. These are classrooms within a student's schedule where they get a smaller class setting, and they're not the lowest students on the scale that we're working with, but they're ones that their needs are not getting met here, but they're getting met in a resource, a smaller classroom, a dynamics class that's math focused or reading focused. And once again, more professional development from our co-op. I know this was brought forth by Ramona Karsner with the co-op, talking about in those resource rooms, the special education teacher is alone in that moment in making sure that those students are being presented the same material, the same vocabulary from the regular classroom. And of course, working together collaboratively well. Tier 3 is that point of the pyramid. You're talking about 8 or 10% of kids that have a disability, and the area of concern is of such wide that it takes a one-on-one individual approach, where these students weekly are working one-on-one with the SPED teacher alongside the content coach. Do we have per se a content coach? No, but I take my best math teacher, my best reading writing teacher, and pair them with that individual, and they're taking baselines, they're scoring work, then more instruction, they're scoring work, and we're preparing these kids for the ultimate, the ACT, which is what even special ed students are scored upon, proficiency in reading and math. So next steps, like I said, this is not new, but of course, ongoing individualized instruction for these focus students, specifically in Tier 2 and 3 outside of that regular classroom. Dr. Clark mentioned PLCs and those meetings taking place monthly for monitoring purposes. Student-teacher conferences looking at progress made, focusing on more strategies and accommodations. And then, of course, at the end of the year, we reflect and see what went well and what we can improve on. And over 4 years, like I said, we've had a dramatic decrease in novice from beginning to end. Some students with disabilities in that novice category are at a certain place, and we don't forget the improvement made in that novice area. If there's a student that doesn't make it out of novice, we still recognize that growth from where they started at to the end of the year. And I mentioned the professional development needed for the SPED and regular ed teachers. Special education teachers are expected to be experts in all areas. It is one of the toughest jobs in our schools working with these students. That's what I have today. Like I said, I'm very passionate about it. We just had a reward day the other day with students after the first semester for their hard work, changing a culture in the SPED department. I'm blessed to have a great SPED department working with these kids.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins.
Any questions?
Any questions?
How do you ascertain who your math teacher is, Beth Son? Is that a peer assessment, or how is that?
It's a professional, through observations, through mentoring and things of that nature. I could mention some names, I won't, but these teachers really rise to the top with a wide variety of different types of students that come to them. It's not necessarily the teacher that teaches calculus, but it's that teacher that has the patience, the communication, the relationship building. These kids get really excited when they get to meet with a math teacher that they may not have on their schedule. It's almost like, oh, this is a safe environment. I can ask the questions. I can get the feedback I need. And the students, it's unbelievable. It's something that I've been really excited about the last 4 years.
So I have a question. As far as special education, that category,
Sure.
are we looking when you say that and you're doing tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, are you looking at like your severe and your profound students, disabled students as well, and getting them ready for the ACT?
The labels that we work with are LBD, EBD, MMD. The FMD students are not in this focus. They're usually on an alternate assessment through our FMD department. Does that answer your question?
It does, it does. So, so when you're looking at tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, you're just looking at the ones you just mentioned, not the FMD.
Right, that's correct.
Okay, and so what about them?
They are getting their instruction and needs met through their FMD classes. Now, the FMD students are not in the FMD room isolated all day. They go out on a schedule of their own.
Okay.
But it's more for socialization.
You mind if I interject just a
Go
little
ahead.
bit? Just to interject this a little bit. So as Mr. Pickett said, those students, we have about 14 to 16 of those at the high school that are on an alternate assessment track. As you questioned about the ACT, none of those are required to take the ACT. And one thing we've started as of this school year, and even Dad went in a little bit last school year, is we've got a community-based work transition program that is often running at the high school that focuses almost solely on those students. So their day is going to look a little bit different. They are going to the regular education classroom more for social opportunities with their peers. But in addition to that, they're going out, that's what we kind of got, well, we have the tiger trolley, if you will. They're going out on the job sites throughout the day and doing some job training activities and kind of gearing them more towards less of a college and career pathway, but more work experience, if that makes sense, to try to hopefully make some kind of connection now to where when they do leave us, we do have a plan for them and their families as far as life after high school goes.
So do you have data showing the
progress
the
we've made this
ready, the
year.
college and career ready, and the work ready for your FMD?
So there's not, I'm sorry.
For FMD,
There's not.
For both.
There's no instrument that we're aware of at this time that will measure the college and career readiness piece towards those of our kids on alternate assessment.
Yeah.
But a lot of the job readiness determinations are made really just on a case-by-case basis with the kid and their family. I know a lot of times when we have a student on alternate assessment in the 11th grade, we will make sure that we invite OVR, Office of Vocational Rehab, to those IEP meetings to kind of plug in some supports if we anticipate that they're going to need services beyond what we're even capable of giving them in high school.
Yeah, I'm just curious how successful that is, that they actually get placed in.
On a job placement. So
Yeah.
every year, each Kentucky Public School District is required to do what's called a yo-yo year one, year out survey. And so basically every school year, every next school year, we have to call those students who are in the alternate assessment program and survey them to determine whether or not they have any type of meaningful gainful employment. Are they on SSI? Are they plugged into other opportunities? I don't know our data right off the top of my head, but I do know that's held at a central location at University of Kentucky called the Human Development Institute. I can pull that and look at it, and we can talk about it sometime if
Yeah,
you'd
I'm
like.
just curious how we're doing on that.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I mean, broad scope-wise, it's statistically the count declines a little bit after any kid leaves high school, not just Bardstown. One thing we have in this community that is, in my opinion, much stronger than a lot of similar-sized communities is relationships with places like the Go Center or Communicare and other type of support employment opportunities. So I can't say this off the top of my head, but I would imagine we're faring better than other places with limited opportunities. But I can definitely look into that for you.
Okay, thank you.
These students with special needs, do they all have IEPs, and is it tracked the same as the regular student body?
yes, there are subcategories with data. They all have an IEP with a certain label, you know, and that also includes a few students with speech, a few autistic. Then, of course, there's emotional behavioral, there's learning disorders, there's mild mental. So, of course, each of those are different. So, whenever you approach a student in this tiered intervention system, you approach each one differently. Of course, you meet them where they're at. Of course, we receive them in 9th grade at a certain level, and then, of course, we meet them where they are at. But with the accommodations, it's our responsibility to show success, show moving them up that level of knowledge, because they graduate just like any other student. But we're working hard. Like I said, we're in our 2nd semester right now. All these students, though, outside the FMD label, will take the ACT with their accommodations. Some have a reader, some have extended time, but they all have the same opportunity to proceed into higher ed like any other student.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All righty. Next, we have Terrace Metrics.
So Mr. Boston will come up and share something I think I'm very excited about. I don't want to steal any of his thunder. He'll share a lot of great things with you, but it's a real opportunity for us and for our students.
I use all the thunder I can get, don't we?
No, it's all yours. It's all yours.
How are you guys today? First off, happy Board Appreciation Month. I don't know if anybody else has mentioned that yet. Just want to say that. Remember that when I'm about to ask you for approval for something. But I am very excited to
Your job is safe, don't worry.
I appreciate it. There's not very many with my certification. That's the one thing I do bank on. Seriously though, I am excited to come to you guys today to talk about a program that we're hoping to adopt as a school district that deals with the mental health needs of our students. I know Mr. Pickett talked to you about some great things we have going on at the high school in regards to academics, but I'm coming to you today to talk a little bit more about the mental health piece. I want to start off with a quote by Maya Angelou that says, "I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it." And when I saw that quote and I think about students in this school district, I think about those that come from broken homes or tough times, and maybe even things that we don't even have any idea that's going on, and that so many of these things happen to them, and it's our job to make sure that we minimize any impact of them being reduced by that outside factor. So I'm coming to you to ask approval for our district to take part in a behavior screener called Terrace Metrics. And Terrace Metrics is a behavior screening or mental health tool that quickly identifies and triages students to receive services and supports. The tool assesses the strongest predictors of interpersonal and interpersonal functioning, both of which are vital components of current and future academic success. So we're going to be looking at resiliency factors of students, what inside drives or factors do they have that might make them less susceptible to adverse outcomes, and also what risk factors are students, what risk factors do they have going on that might put them at more risk for adverse outcomes. The importance of assessing resiliency and risk is that even the presence of one risk indicator can reduce academic outcomes by 20%. So if we have a student going through something internally that we're not aware of how to treat, or maybe not aware of at all, that can reduce academic outcomes by 20%. It can increase the chances of school dropout by 38%, and it can contribute to poor life quality in adulthood, including early mortality, whether that be through poor health choices, drug habits, etc. Yet research shows that the presence of even one resiliency indicator can reduce the effects of risk indicators by half. So what Terrace Metrics is a comprehensive survey that students will take that can quickly and accurately assess the complete state of their mental health for kids grades 3 through 12. Because of the nature of the questions and the information we're trying to gather, they haven't seen a lot of success with grades preschool through 2, but I do know this company has mentioned they're working on some possibilities for that age. But basically, just to show you what we'll start out with, each student from grades 3 through 12 was set at a computer, then they would take a survey. The data from that survey would go through a data analysis, and the company would analyze the data using their algorithm to identify individual student functioning. Student data would be aggregated back to the district and then on into the schools, to where a school district would get an individual report on each student that shows how they compare nationally to other similar age peers in regards to areas of risk and resiliency. So we think of those grit factors, if you will. Output 2, what we get is, again, a school and district report. And then output 3 being a letter to parents. So there's 3 things that could benefit us from a student taking this assessment. The first is we have access to a digital report on each student that takes the assessment. We have school and district data that we can look at as administrative teams, as mental health teams, to kind of prioritize kids that may be going through things that we don't even know they're going through. And output 3, that letter to parents, to where we can say, hey, mom, dad, your student or your child took this assessment. Here's some things that they reported. We just want to make you aware of this. And we're able to share that information with families. There's 13 indicators that this is Terrace metric system is going to look at. Resilience indicators are global satisfaction, hope, mentioned grit, academic expectations, positive school experiences, resiliency, and leadership qualities. And risk indicators are anxiety, peer victimization or bullying, school violence, social rejection, depression, or suicidal thoughts. Another thing that the gentleman that first showed us this, who was actually, I know some of you all know Miss Andrew, one of our school psychologists, her professor when she was at University of Kentucky, he shared that through his research, they've kind of determined that students, especially those in higher grades, are going to be much more honest with a computer-based type of assessment than it would be a face-to-face assessment. They'll often tell things to the computer they may not tell a teacher or a mental health counselor. So we would hopefully be able to gain a lot of information in regards to this, things that students may be afraid to tell an adult or another peer. Based on the results of this, schools will get reports on each student, as I mentioned, and we will be able to place students into one of 4 distinct categories, 1 being at risk, 2 suboptimal, then average, and then optimal. So we will have our students grouped into one of 4 categories to where school staff can work together to determine that these students here and here might need some extra attention. That may not be anything, that may not be a grand intervention of any kind, but it could just say, hey, teachers need to make sure that they're giving this student X amount of positive praise throughout the day if they suffer from issues of low self-esteem or those sort of things. So when I'm talking about interventions, I don't want you to automatically think extreme mental health counseling. We just give us some data that knows, hey, if Lance is kind of, depressed because he's real short, Mr. Clark can say, man, you look, or Dr. Clark can say, man, you look tall today. So that kind of stuff would be helpful for them. Sorry. Some key benefits of this is that it has the potential to give schools, parents, and students a better understanding of their current mental health functioning. In addition to that, it can help parents and schools work together to highlight areas that could be improved by a tangible action plan. Some students will require a tangible action plan. And for those students that we feel need additional referral, we have our own LCSWs on staff, licensed clinical social workers. We partner with Astra and Communicare as local district mental health providers. So we will have an intelligent and an intentional way to help drive referrals for students that might need additional mental health intervention. Does anybody have any questions? I know I went through it kind of
I want to
quick.
add just a couple
Sure,
of
please.
things.
Yes, sir.
One, the support on intervention, we would get that support from professionals through Terrace Metrics.
That's correct.
In addition to our own supports that we have here, like the mental health professionals that we have. They are walking with us every step of the way in terms of these are ideas for you to implement in terms of intervention. That's one point I wanted to be sure you knew. And the second one is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Boston, I think I'm right in saying this, that a behavioral screener is something that's been an expectation that schools should have for a very long time. The unfortunate thing is that behavioral screeners, there's not been a lot of good choices out there, or maybe no choices really to speak of.
Correct, yes.
But this meets that requirement.
Correct.
We have our math screeners, we have our reading screener. This would serve as our behavioral health screener.
And to make sure we're all doing the same thing, just as we do with other forms of academic assessments. Right now, each school kind of does their own thing in regards to getting behavioral data on students. A lot of that is anecdotal or paper pencil, whereas this would have us to dive into what each kid's thinking on a much more intentional, even personal level.
You're using the term mental health here. How does HIPAA or any other
That's
confidentiality
good.
work into this?
Yes, good question. So just as we do with Astra and Communicare, essentially by agreeing to this, what you guys as a Board of Education are saying is that we are allowed to share student data with this company. And all they do is take that data, the assessment information, attach it to the child and send it back to us. They are not allowed to use it for any type of third-party anything. It's just as we make referrals to Astra or Communicare or places like that, they would share that back with us. Just as we do with MAP testing and those other sort of things, like MAP, NWEA, the company, technically they have all that data on our kids, but they are not allowed to share that with anybody. They may be able to share like it on a global scale, but never attach a student's names to it because it is all HIPAA and FERPA protected.
Well, that doesn't concern me as much as that information being with the school, within the different teachers, within the subjects, people, access to that information.
I'm not, to be quite honest,
No?
I'm not real sure how it looks on an actual report, but I can certainly ask and find out.
I can see something, an assessment being tagged to a student for
Right.
life. I mean, they come down and they're, the assessment says they're not optimal, they're in dire need of help, and it's a mental health issue, then they'll carry that from their school information. for
So
life.
the expectation that we must fulfill, if there was any concern, is that we're going to contact parents, notify parents. This tool is in use in other districts. There's not very many. There's, I want to say 13, but maybe it's more than that. That it's being used. I wish I could recall a district I had a conversation with, and it escapes me at the moment.
They in Kentucky?
Yes, all those 13 or 15 are in Kentucky. Yes. So I'm pretty sure I remember his name too, Dr. Gilman, who shared this stuff with us. I mean, they are very, very in tune with those concerns that you have. The things that I foresee is that we're able, and is what we're all about as a district, is we're going to be able to even better serve the individual needs of students. We are still held to those same compliance requirements of, we can't share this with just anybody. We're going to call mom and dad. It's just like in circumstances where a teacher might get personal data and information that they are privy to, but they are held and bound by confidentiality.
There is an opt-out option for.
And there is an opt-out option, yes, for families. Whether or not we do that as a passive consent or active consent, we can make those decisions as well. But I think it adds a tremendous service, potential for tremendous service for kids in our district. I think it helps us be much more in tune. And we ask the very same questions that you're asking today of Dr. Gilman. And he did a very good job of explaining, his professional responsibilities and what this company is going to do and how it is serving other districts in the Kentucky as well.
Okay, so what are we asking for today?
Just approval to enter into contract with Terrace Metrics, and for us to then start planning on when we would provide that assessment to students.
Do we have a cost estimate of this?
It's a per child cost. Mr. Beck, do you remember the per child cost for, is it
$3.50 per student.
$3.50 per student?
And we can give this up to 3 times a year, so there is some benefit that if we were to screen students at the start of the school year, we could go back again at Christmas and do it and see, are they still rating themselves the same as they had in the past?
Hopefully.
So we know whether
Yeah, it's
or
not a one-time,
That's
that's
right.
right.
So
Do you
we
have
know
an
whether or not
accuracy
everything-
rate on this?
No, I do not, but I can find out.
Some of this a product of the school shootings and that type of stuff? Is that where some of this has emerged from?
I know that this gentleman has been working on this for several years. As a school psychologist, his primary interest was in behavior intervention type of things, but I would say that probably crossed his mind when he was developing the system. It's very heavily seen in the areas out of Cincinnati because right now he is a professor at University of Cincinnati, or was a professor at Cincinnati. So I know some of the districts in Kentucky are using it, or like Kenton County and some of the other areas right there around the university there.
So I have just one other question.
Sure.
So, my question is the liability, because whenever you screen and you identify, then you better follow through and it better happen.
Correct.
So who is going to be in charge of this program and making sure of the follow through?
We haven't got that far yet, but I do know what we have said is that we've asked, like, what is our duty as a school district? And according to Dr. Gilman and some of the other folks we've talked to, is we have a duty to report to the parent our findings, which is that
Which
parent.
again is better make sure that happens.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Any more questions or discussion?
I can see a little problem here. Kids get together and they're pretty smart. And the kids will know the rating, right, that they got?
I would assume if an adult sat down and felt like they had the kid had the ability to digest that information, they could know the rating. Yes,
Okay, kids get together and they start talking, about what was your rating, what was your rating? Stuff's gonna come out. That could lead to more bullying. Say, well, you got problems. Is anything to address to that?
I think it would just have to be a very intentional effort to discuss that with the kids for those that needed that intervention. I can't imagine that we would sit with every student that took the assessment and go over their report one by one, but that would probably be some discussions we would need to have and work our way through it if we move forward with this.
Okay.
It seems like we're concerned about the identity be associated with the outcome of their test. So is there redaction of their identity in terms of the sharing of that data so that they're...
To others within the school district?
Yes.
Or, I would assume there could be, but I don't know if there automatically is.
I see Mr. Roby's point on this.
Yeah.
Would it be possible to table it and bring it up instead of bringing it to...
Sure.
For future
And so
data?
I feel like we need more information and there needs to be more of a plan before it comes to us, kind of.
I think that would be just fine.
As for a motion,
I make a motion to table it for further review.
do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have the fiscal year draft budget.
All right.
We'll ask for approval.
Ms. Rogers,
She's on board today.
she is.
Alrighty, it's hard to believe we're here again, since feels like we just did our working budget, but it's ongoing, right? So some really good news. I don't know how much Dr. Clark has shared with you previously, but we have spent a considerable amount of time in the last month and a half, meeting with department heads, supervisors, principals. Dr. Clark and I have sat down and have discussed the needs for each school, each department, where they see what they're going to need in the next fiscal year. So with that, we've developed this fiscal year 2020 budget. So I'm just going to provide some highlights for you. This is very preliminary. As you all are aware, this is the draft budget that's due to be reviewed by you all this month. So the draft budget totals $33,753,612. Of that amount, Fund 1 is $28,685,258. So what we're going to look at is the revenue side and the expenditure side. Break both of those down for you all. So on the revenue side, the beginning balance is estimated to be $1.9 million, some change there, for the general fund. We're isolating the general fund since it's the primary one. This figure is a projection from the fiscal year 19, this year, ending balance. And that will eventually, it will include end of the year entries that we make that are not known at this time. So there could be things that transpire between now and the end of June, and then also when we go through our audit, there may be entries that we make that will affect this year ending balance, which is our beginning balance for next year. Also, this figure does not include any capital fund transfers to the general fund from Fund 310 or 320. As you all are aware, what is available to us this year to transfer is a little over $709,000. So we don't have any intention to move those funds, so those are not included, as we've done in years past, which has actually helped to offset the expenditures that we have in general fund and boost our ending balance. Also, there's no adjustments for the current year income for next year, meaning that next year's draft budget is based on this year's budget's funding level. So there's been no increases. For example, at the end of this year, we'll know our enrollment closer, so we'll be able to estimate what our SEEK is. We've not made any changes to that other than our beginning balance. On the expenditure side, the debt service schedules for bond and KISTA payments have been updated to what we know that they're going to be for next fiscal year. The budget includes a step increase for our staff, but no raise to the salary schedule. For Fund 1, this will cost approximately $254,000 for salary and benefits, that step alone. Non-recurring budget items have been removed, so that includes current allocations for technology, facility and ground upgrades, such as roofing and asphalt. Those have been removed. All other expenditure line items are unchanged to maintain current expenditure levels in areas such as utilities, instructional materials, and related activities. So things that we know that we're going to have to pay for next year, or that we anticipate we're going to pay for, those are in the budget. The things that we added this year, technology, some of those other things have been removed. The contingency is estimated at $1.4 million, which right now is 5%. So that's above the state mandated minimum of 2% for our contingency budget. So the actual will be dependent on our final beginning balance, and then also entries that we make following the conclusion of the district and the school's needs assessments. So as we go along and develop the budget, receive input from you all as well, we'll be closer in May to know what our budget's going to be for next fiscal year.
So if I may, let me add a few things, and I want to reiterate something that Ms. Rogers already said. This has been another great learning opportunity. It also has, I think it's been an opportunity to kind of definitely continue to maintain a high level of trust among different departments and school leaders, to have those very intentional conversations. And you know, I think Ms. Rogers and I definitely being really good listeners, and certainly maybe having some dialogue back and forth, but really having open ears to what folks are having to say. The draft budget really doesn't reflect those conversations yet, and I think that's very appropriate, because what I hope happens next is that as a board, we get more engaged in the coming months leading up to May, to make sure that everybody understands these are, for example, these are some things we really want to get done. So those things need to be conversations that we're having to decide on, yes, we need to commit to these things, or maybe we decide that we do not, or to some level that we're going to. So the draft budget is very preliminary. It certainly meets the requirements for sharing the draft budget with you, but the work has already started. I mean, we're well over a month into that. The inclusion of board members in that work is yet to come, but that's going to be coming next. I think I'm a sponge. I'm learning a great deal going through this, and engaging with you all, I think, is ultimately going to help, make sure that we have a really solid budget, and also is going to help, make decisions moving forward as we start into the next school year. So I just wanted to reiterate that and share that's kind of the approach right now.
My idea about these 4 budgets that we have came from, I guess, Robert Smotherman. The first budget we have is the budget budget number 1 is based on past data, and that's a starting place. Okay, the second, third, and then the final one is for us to be aware where there are discrepancies.
Yeah.
Where some accounts are high and some are going way out of limits. It's up to the board to find these and take some kind of corrective action. Is this basically what you understand?
Yes. but I will say that for my sake, and again, being the person that's learning, some of those things that were in place this year, for this fiscal year, some of those things are not included in the draft budget that you were shared with today. And based on your example, they would have been. I'm not nervous about that. I think, again, it just helps us have dialogue about, okay, these are some areas, for example, technology is one. This is an area that we need to talk about. We've had work in that area. I mean, this school year, technology committee has been engaged in some really important work. So there's more conversation to occur rather than just having a total there. And that's the part I'm excited about. So yes, that is essentially, except some of those things are not reflected in the draft budget. It's bare bones. This is for us to just continue doing business. That's what the draft budget reflects. But if based on work that we are engaged in right now and having conversations about that, and then things that we want to achieve next year is yet to get fleshed out.
Okay. Very, thank you.
Yeah.
More discussion or questions? I would ask for the approval of the fiscal year 2020 draft budget. Have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It passes. Thank you. We're at the nutrition and physical activity report card.
So just to kind of get us started, this is a report card that you all have seen in previous years. It's rather straightforward. However, it also is an opportunity for groups like the Health Council to really get involved in this work and developing or collecting the data and getting involved in this report card. And based on my conversation with Ms. Cecil, I think it could even be grander in terms of how this report card could really drive that committee's work, that council's work. But again, this is something you've seen before, and maybe there's a few highlights Ms. Cecil could share.
What I noticed on this year's report when Felicia and I began to work on this was the slight increase in participation. That is our goal. As you know, the Hungry Act has kind of put a halt to their regulations till about 2022. So we're not having to lower the sodium, and we now can have 50% whole grain instead of 100%. So I anticipate our participation is going to rise when I start bringing back the white bread. When I start bringing that back, I think the participation's going to go up. So,
And good food, right?
I love how you brought it down.
yeah, so I'm excited about that. Other than that, I think we're right on target. I hope that these regulations will no longer change, but I think we've adapted to them well. We never saw a decline in our participation when that became effective in 2010. So.
The kale casserole wasn't a big hit.
No, it wasn't. Sorry.
Now, you're still going to have the option of the whole grain bread.
We have to have 50%. At the average of the end of the week, I have to prove that 50% of our grains were whole grain.
Okay.
But that, that's including your breadings on products. That's where you kind of stick it in there and
Gotcha.
so.
Tweaking out.
Yeah.
Hey, they make them.
Especially the fried.
They do.
They do.
Deep fried, yeah.
Yeah.
Y'all still use chicken paste?
No.
It's base. Is there any more questions? That's good. I'll go on after lunch.
I make a motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The approval of nutrition physical activity report card is passed. Now we're going to our attorney resolution, Dr. Ferris and Mills.
As you've seen multiple emails from me, we have an opportunity to work with a new council if we were to ever need them and rely on them. Their representatives are actually here, Eric Ferris and Joe
Mills.
You said
Mills.
Mills, Joe Mills. So I've done my homework. They come highly recommended. I think over 20 years of school law experience. Would like for, of course, any discussion, but I'm hopeful for approval of working with these fine gentlemen.
This is our legal counsel on retainer?
Yes, that is correct. Yes, on retainer, that's right. I think that's the right term.
Primarily for school?
It's as needed, I don't know if that's the right word, it's on retainer appropriate. It's as needed by.
Contract, as
Service
needed,
contract.
Yeah.
only bill as
we use, yeah.
services required.
Yeah.
Have any questions or discussion? I would ask for a motion to approve the attorney resolution, Buckle Harrison Mills.
So moved.
Have a second? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That approval is passing.
All right, Mr. Hood, school
Oh, yeah,
calendar.
School calendar.
Oh, so sorry.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
Jumped right in there, didn't I?
Okay, well, as we mentioned last time that we met, we gave options to all of our staff, faculty, different ones in our community. We have received overwhelmingly, as I thought we would, the option B was the choice by most of the people that we came in contact with. There were some reasons for that, I think. I think primarily most folks like to see us out of school in May, of sometime in May, not running into June, just based on other schools in our community that do the same thing. We do have the snow makeup days are still built in here, as you can tell. I think the committee, two of which are sitting in front of me right now, would agree that there was lots of talk back and forth on how to make this work, and some give and take by lots of people. But I bring for approval today to you the option B calendar choice for the 2019-20 school year.
Okay, do we have any questions or discussion? Our plan B we looked at before, so I think that hasn't changed?
No, did not change.
Okay, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve our 2019-2020 school calendar.
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We have the approval for school calendar. Thank you.
I gave Mr. Hood the reassurance that we would not mess with it once it was set.
Okay, we're going to look for approval for our travel authorizations this month.
You have 3 trips in front of you or in your board packet. One was a combined group, between the high school and middle school. This is part of Black History Month celebration activity, visiting the Underground Railroad in Cincinnati. Also, Bardstown High School's FCC LA annual state meeting in March. And then Bardstown High School's Y Club participating in the Kentucky United Nations Assembly also in March.
Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second, please.
Second.
All in favor of the travel authorizations, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? They pass. Thank you. We have now a leave of absence request. Need approval for that?
Yeah, you have just one leave of absence in your information.
Can we get a motion approved? Thank you. A second, please. Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Approval passes for leave of absence requests. As we have personnel, resignations, retirement.
Yeah, there's a one retirement and one resignation.
Alrighty, and we have the SBDM council minutes in your packets. And we're ready to adjourn.
So moved.
Do we have a second? All sustained for adjournment?
Second.
Oh. All in favor? Say aye. All opposed? Thanks.
Classic that we lose it at that part.
So, going to invite you all to some lunch and some celebrating for appreciation. We're gonna be making our way over to the high school, but taking a. Oh, and here's 2 escorts.